Why did the old man always sit facing the door? It was one of those details Emma Porter noticed long before she realized she was watching him. He came in every morning at exactly 7:15, rain, snow, or shine, and took booth 5 in the corner of Sunrise Diner. From there, he had a clear line of sight to both exits. Always the same seat, always the same order, always alone. Most people in Millage didn't pay attention to details like that anymore. The steel town had gone quiet long ago, its heartbeat slowed to a tired rhythm of unemployment checks and half-empty bars. But Emma had been trained to notice things other people missed. Old habits die hard, even for a soldier who no longer wore the uniform. She'd spent years learning how to read the smallest shifts in a person's body, tension in the jaw, tremors in the hand, a heartbeat that didn't match the words coming out of their mouth. She could still tell when someone was hiding pain or fear or guilt. And the old man at booth 5, he carried all three. That morning had begun like any other. The hum of the jukebox, the hiss of coffee, the smell of bacon and old stories clinging to the walls. She was halfway through the morning rush, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up when the door chimed. 7:15 on the dot. Walter Bishop stepped inside. He was dressed the same as always. A pressed jacket that had seen better days, scuffed shoes polished with military precision, and a paper tucked under one arm. His hands trembled when he reached for the menu, the subtle tremor of Parkinson that no one else noticed. But Emma did. She always did. "Morning, Mr. Bishop," she said softly, pouring his coffee before he could ask. "Black, right?" He nodded, eyes still scanning the diner. "Black and the special." "The one with the overcooked eggs and burnt toast," she teased gently. For a moment, something like a smile flickered across his face. Then it was gone. Emma moved like she'd been doing this her whole life, fast, graceful, efficient. But beneath the calm, there was always that pulse of restlessness. The diner was supposed to be her safe place, her quiet exile. After the army, she couldn't go back to hospitals. Too many ghosts in those white hallways. Too many hands she couldn't save. So she found Millage, this nowhere town with its rusting mills and fatting glory, and a diner where nobody asked about scars. But that morning, something felt off. She didn't notice it at first, just the way Frank Sullivan, the retired police chief, lowered his newspaper when the sound of motorcycles echoed from outside. A deep, thunderous rumble that didn't belong to this quiet town. Then came the silence, the kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. 4 black Harleys pulled up outside, their chrome glinting in the gray October light. Steam rose from the wet asphalt as they idled in perfect formation. The riders cut their engines in unison, too precise, too deliberate, military precision. The jukebox needle skipped mid-song. Conversations died. Emma felt it in her gut before she even turned around. Trouble. The door swung open, the bell chiming like a warning. 4 men stepped inside, dressed in black leather, water dripping from their jackets. The leader was taller than the rest, broad-shouldered, with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Dog tags clinked faintly against his chest when he moved. Emma's hand tightened on the coffee pot. She'd seen men like him before, men who moved like predators, whose stillness was more dangerous than motion. The leader scanned the diner slowly, not like a man looking for someone, like a man assessing threats. And then he stopped. "Are you Emma Porter?" His voice was deep, measured, the kind that didn't ask questions, it issued orders. The diner went silent again. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Emma forced herself to stand tall. "Yeah," she said quietly, "that's me." The man removed his sunglasses. His eyes were dark but not cold. "My name's Mason Richards. We need to talk about Walter Bishop." For a heartbeat she couldn't speak. The coffee pot trembled in her hands. "Walter, he's not here yet." "He won't be," Mason said softly. "He passed away last night." The words didn't register at first. Passed away. The old man, booth 5, the one who never missed a morning. The pot slipped from her hands and shattered against the floor. Hot coffee splashed across her shoes, but she didn't flinch. The retired police chief was already standing. "Now hold on," Frank said gruffly. "Who are you people?" The other bikers spread out across the diner, each taking a position by the doors and windows. It wasn't a threat, it was a formation. "Security. We worked for Walter Bishop," Mason said. "Private detail, former military contractors." He reached into his jacket slowly, pulling out a leather case. "I'm not here to cause trouble, but we need Miss Porter to come with us. Mr. Bishop left specific instructions." Before Emma could respond, the door opened again. This time it wasn't a biker. It was a man in a tailored gray suit, umbrella in one hand, briefcase in the other. His movements were precise, deliberate, the kind of calm that comes from decades of control. "Miss Porter," he said, inclining his head. "Marcus Reed, senior partner at Blackwood, Reed and Hamilton. I represent the estate of Walter Bishop." Emma's throat tightened. "Estate," she whispered. "You mean?" "Yes," he said gently. "Mr. Bishop is deceased. His final instructions were clear. We are to escort you for the reading of his will, immediately." The sound of a coffee mug dropping to the floor echoed behind her. Diana Reeves, the diner's oldest waitress, stood frozen near the counter, face pale. Emma's mind spun. "That can't be right," she stammered. "He barely even talked to me. I just cut his toast sometimes." "That," Reed said, "is exactly why you're here." Everyone in the diner stared at her now. The cops, the cooks, the waitresses, the regulars. She could feel the weight of their curiosity pressing down on her. Max Callahan, the diner's owner, or maybe not really the owner, appeared from the kitchen. A man built from old discipline and quiet strength. The kind of man who still stood like a Marine even when he was just flipping pancakes. "It's okay, Frank," he said quietly. "I know Mason. We served together a long time ago." Emma turned to him, confused. "You know these guys?" Max nodded slowly. "Beirut, 83. Mason and I were part of the same unit. Walter Bishop was our handler." She stared at him, speechless. "Go with them, Emma," Max said softly. "Walter wasn't just some old man. He saw something in you." The diner felt unreal now, like she was watching herself from outside her own body. The rain had started again, running in silver sheets down the windows. "I need my bag," she said finally, her voice distant. Mason nodded once. "We'll wait." When she returned, apron folded over her arm, Max was standing by the door. "Whatever, waiting out there," he said quietly. "Face it the way you faced everything else, with your eyes open." Outside, a black Lincoln idled at the curb, flanked by 4 Harleys. The bikers formed a diamond formation around the car as Mason opened the door for her. For a moment, Emma looked back. Through the rain, she could see booth 5, empty now, the newspaper still folded on the table. She slid into the car beside Marcus Reed. The scent of leather and rain filled the space. "Mr. Reed," she said finally, voice steady again. "What's going on? Why me?" Reed opened his briefcase, pulling out a thin file. "Walter Bishop was a man of great means, Miss Porter. At the time of his death, he was worth approximately $4 billion. The number hit her like a physical blow. "The old man at booth 5, she whispered. Reed nodded. "Founder of Bishop Enterprises, former intelligence officer, art collector, industrialist, but above all," he glanced at her, "a man who never forgot the people who treated him like one." The rain thinned to a drizzle as the car turned onto the highway. The bikers followed close, 2 in front, 2 behind. A convoy. Emma stared out the window, the small town shrinking in the distance. She'd come here to disappear, to bury the part of herself that had seen too much, lost too much. She served in places where names didn't matter, where life and death were separated by seconds and silence. And now, A dead billionaire had called her back into a world of secrets. She reached into her apron pocket and found the small orange bottle she'd forgotten to return to Walter the day before. His medication, still half full. She held it tightly in her palm as the skyline of Bishop Enterprises appeared ahead, glass and steel cutting through the clouds. Her reflection in the window looked foreign, stronger somehow. Whatever waited inside that tower, she knew one thing. Walter Bishop hadn't just left her money, he'd left her a mission. And somewhere deep down, the soldier she thought she'd buried opened her eyes again. What kind of man hides billions behind a cup of black coffee? That question haunted Emma as the convoy rolled through the city. The black Lincoln glided between sheets of fatting rain, its windows tinted dark enough to turn daylight into a soft gray haze. Ahead, two Harleys sliced through traffic like loyal sentinels. Behind, two more followed, silent, exact, protective. She had seen escorts like this before, years ago, convoys in war zones, armored columns carrying names the public would never know. But she had never expected to ride in one again, certainly not wearing a waitress's shoes and holding a dead man's medicine bottle. Marcus Reed sat beside her, calm as stone. He carried himself like a man who'd been reading secrets for decades and never once lost his composure. Every movement was deliberate, the way he adjusted his cuffs, the way his gaze tracked the rain. Walter Bishop planned for every contingency, he said finally, as if answering the thoughts she hadn't spoken. Even this conversation. Emma studied him. You knew him long. 30 years, as his attorney, occasionally his conscience, but he preferred to keep both at a professional distance. He glanced at her. Until you. She frowned. He barely spoke to me. Reed allowed himself a faint smile. Some men speak less when they've finally found what they were looking for. The car slowed before a tower of glass and steel that seemed to rise straight out of the storm. Bishop Enterprises. Its mirrored surface caught the thinning sunlight, reflecting it down onto the gray streets like a blade of light. Inside the lobby, marble floors shone like still water. Security men in tailored suits stood at discreet intervals, hands folded, eyes never resting. The air smelled faintly of money and control. Emma hesitated at the threshold. The soles of her cheap shoes squeaked against the marble, echoing in a space that didn't forgive small sounds. Mason Richards fell into step beside her, his heavy boots clicking with a soldier's rhythm. "You're safe here," he murmured, "but stay close." Safe, the word felt foreign. The elevator ride was a vertical blur, floor numbers blinking past too quickly to count. When the doors opened, Emma found herself facing a reception area that looked more like a museum. Modern art, sculpted light, the hush of wealth. Waiting near the windows were two people who looked carved from that same expensive silence. Catherine Bishop and her son, Nathan. She recognized them instantly, not from photographs but from posture, from entitlement so practiced it was almost genetic. Catherine was tall, perfectly poised, dressed in navy-tailored silk. Her silver blonde hair framed a face that might once have been kind, but was now sharpened by loss and bitterness. Beside her stood Nathan, early 30s, immaculate in a tailored suit, handsome in the way magazines like to sell arrogance as charm. Marcus Reed greeted them with a measured nod. "Catherine, Nathan, thank you for waiting." Catherine's voice could have cut glass. "We weren't told we'd be waiting for company." Her eyes flicked toward Emma. "Who is she?" "Emma Porter," Reed replied, "named in Mr. Bishop's will." Nathan's laugh was soft and cruel. "You can't be serious, the waitress. This is a joke." Emma stiffened, but Mason shifted slightly behind her, just enough that Nathan's smirk faltered. "The boardroom is ready," Reed said, tone final. "Let's proceed." They walked down a hallway lined with original American paintings. Hopper, Wyeth, O'Keeffe, each one worth more than the diner Emma now apparently owned. The art glowed beneath carefully positioned lights, silent witnesses to decades of ambition. Inside the boardroom, a single table dominated the space, mahogany polished to a mirror, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Through the panoramic windows, the city stretched out, rusted factories in the distance, the diner's neon sign a faint flicker in the gray skyline. Emma felt the surreal weight of it. She had scrubbed floors not 10 blocks from here. Now she was about to sit among people who owned the city. Reed took his place at the head of the table. "We are here to read the last will and testament of Walter Bishop," he began. His voice, calm and legal, filled the room like the steady tick of an old clock. The first half of the reading was a blur of figures, foundations, charities, trusts, millions shifting on paper. Catherine sat unmoving, Nathan tapping an impatient finger against the table. Then Reed paused, his gaze lifted, meeting Emma. "To my daughter-in-law, Catherine Bishop, and my grandson, Nathan Bishop," he read, "I leave the contents of the Bishop family trust as contractually obligated, $10 million each." Nathan's hand slammed the table. $10 million, that's nothing compared to. Reed continued, unflinching. "All remaining personal effects and controlling interests are to be distributed as follows." The room tightened. "To Miss Emma Porter," he said, each word deliberate. "The young woman who showed an old man kindness when she had no reason to, who treated me with dignity when others saw only weakness. I bequeath a legacy of gratitude. A sum of $250,000 to ease her burdens as she once eased mine." The words seemed to echo off the glass. Emma's breath caught. 250,000. She thought of hospital bills, of her mother's trembling hands, of nights spent choosing between medication and groceries. Her vision blurred. Nathan laughed again, brittle and sharp. Unbelievable, the man lost his mind. But Reed raised a hand. "I am not finished." The silence that followed was absolute. "And finally," he read, "because it was the last place on earth where I felt seen, not as a source of wealth, but as a man, I leave to Miss Porter, in its entirety, the property and business known as Sunrise Diner, located at 152 Elm Street, along with its attached investment portfolio valued at approximately $5 million. For a moment the world stopped. Catherine went pale. Nathan's mouth opened, but no sound came. Even the city beyond the windows seemed to hold its breath. Emma sat frozen, unable to process the words. The diner, her diner. The place where she'd poured coffee, and hidden from her past, had just become the center of an empire's final act. Nathan found his voice first. "You can't be serious," he hissed. $5 million for a waitress will contest this." Reed closed the folder with deliberate care. "You are, of course, free to pursue any legal action you deem appropriate, but the will was executed under full capacity, witnessed and notarized. Walter Bishop was of sound mind." Nathan's face reddened. She manipulated him. Emma met his eyes across the table, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't manipulate anyone. I just cut his toast." Mason's lips twitched in the ghost of a smile. The meeting dissolved in fractured silence. Catherine sat motionless, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the tabletop. Nathan stormed out, slamming the door so hard the crystal water glasses trembled. Reed gathered his papers. "Miss Porter," he said gently, "Mr. Bishop anticipated resistance. There are matters we should discuss privately." He handed her a thick envelope embossed with a gold seal. "Inside you'll find documentation of the diner transfer, financial access codes, and instructions to retrieve a key from Mr. Bishop's residence. Mason will accompany you." Emma rose slowly. Her knees felt unsteady, her mind even more so. She wanted air, rain, anything that didn't smell like marble and power. As she reached the hallway, Catherine's voice followed her, low, trembling, no longer the voice of command. "Miss Porter." Emma turned. Catherine stood in the doorway, eyes unreadable. "Whatever you think Walter saw in you," she said, "I hope you're strong enough to bear it, because the rest of us were." The elevator doors closed between them. Outside, the storm had faded into mist. The bikers waited beside their engines, helmets resting on handlebars. Mason guided Emma toward the elevator that led to the underground garage. "I don't understand any of this," she said as they descended. "Why would he leave me all this? He barely even talked to me." "Walter Bishop didn't waste words," Mason replied. "If he gave you something, he meant you to have it." The doors opened to the smell of oil and concrete. 3 Harleys waited near a sleek black Cadillac. One biker mounted up immediately. "Ray takes point," Mason said, his tone slipping effortlessly into command. "Hank, rear guard." He turned back to Emma. "You ride with me. The car's too easy to tail." She hesitated, staring at the motorcycle. "It's been a while." "Just hold on," he said, handing her a helmet. "You'll remember how." The engine thundered to life beneath them, a low, living growl that vibrated through her bones. As they sped through the wet streets, wind whipping against her face, the last 24 hours replayed in fragments. Coffee, rain, an old man's trembling hands, and the words, "I leave to Miss Emma Porter." By the time they reached Park Avenue, the city's heart had begun to glow with the reflection of evening lights. Mason stopped before a towering Art Deco building, whose brass doors gleamed even under the fading sun. Walter Bishop's penthouse. Inside, marble gave way to warmth, mahogany, velvet, books. The air smelled of old tobacco and art. Everywhere Emma looked, there were paintings she recognized from textbooks. Hopper's lonely streets, O'Keeffe's desert blooms, Wyeth's haunted fields. "This is where he lived," she whispered. "Where he hid," Mason corrected softly. "From the world, from his family, maybe from himself." He led her down a hallway lined with black and white photographs, civil rights marches, moon landings, the faces of an era. At the end stood a heavy oak door, scarred by time, the kind of door that belonged to another century. "This was his study," Mason said. "Reed left the key with me." Emma took it from his hand. The brass was warm against her palm. "I'll wait out here," Mason said, stepping back. "He wanted you to go in alone." The lock turned with a solid click. Inside, the room smelled of dust, coffee, and pipe smoke. Bookshelves bowed under the weight of leather volumes. Maps and sketches covered the walls, pinned together by strings of red thread that crossed like arteries. A desk sat in the center, cluttered with notebooks and photographs. And behind it, a wall of faces. Hundreds of photos, letters, newspaper clippings. At the center, a single image of a woman smiling in front of a diner sign that read Liz's Home Cooking. The handwriting beneath the photo read, "Elizabeth Bishop, 1946. Emma stared. The warmth in the woman's smile felt achingly familiar. Pinned beside that photo was a smaller one, taken only months ago. A candid shot of Emma herself, standing outside Sunrise Diner, laughing as sunlight hit her hair. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting, "She has Elizabeth's spirit. Perhaps she can redeem what I built on bitterness." Her breath caught. The old man hadn't been testing her kindness. He'd been searching for something he'd lost. On the desk lay an envelope marked with her name. She unfolded the letter inside. "My dear Emma, if you are reading this, I am gone. The money is for your freedom. The diner is for your heart. And this key," he had enclosed another, smaller one, "is for your future. You remind me of the woman who saved me once from myself. There are truths in these walls you will not want to see, but you must. You will soon find that kindness has enemies. Walter Bishop." Emma lowered the letter, eyes stinging. The study's shadows seemed deeper now, filled with echoes of secrets not yet told. Behind her, the door creaked open. Mason's silhouette filled the frame. "You found it." She turned, holding up the letter. "He's left me more than money. He's left me a war." Mason nodded slowly. Then we'd better start preparing. Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant but coming closer. And somewhere high above the city, the ghost of Walter Bishop might have smiled. How do you protect a man who's already dead? That question wouldn't leave her mind. It hung there between the hum of the city and the echo of thunder fatting over the skyline. Emma stood by the penthouse window long after Mason left her alone again. Down below, headlights streamed like veins of light through wet asphalt. The city didn't care about ghosts or about women trying to carry their promises. She traced the edges of Walter Bishop's letter again, eyes lingering on the last line. You will soon find that kindness has enemies. What enemies? She whispered. The answer came sooner than she expected. The next morning, Emma returned to the diner. Not because she had to, but because she didn't know where else to go. The same flickering neon sign buzzed against the cloudy sky. The same worn counter, same smell of burnt toast. But now the place felt heavier, as if Walter's absence had left a hole in the air itself. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like she'd imagined the last 48 hours. The lawyers, the bikers, the will, it all seemed too large for this quiet corner of the world. But when she reached booth 5, the truth hit her. His coffee mug was still there. The staff had left it untouched. She sat down, tracing the rim of the cup with her thumb. Then she noticed something wedged beneath the napkin holder, a small black USB drive, no bigger than her thumbnail. Her pulse quickened. Walter had hidden something here. She turned it over in her palm. No markings, just a faint scratch, 2 letters etched into the plastic, VV. She didn't need Reed to tell her that stood for Victor Vance. Even saying the name out loud made her stomach tighten. Vance was Bishop Enterprises' old rival, a private security magnate who built his empire on surveillance, black contracts, and mercenaries for hire. Walter had once called him a man who sold safety by burning the world. And now, it seemed, Vance was part of this story too. Emma pocketed the drive, just as the bell over the door jingled. It was Frank Sullivan, the retired police chief, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Didn't expect you back so soon," he said, voice rough but kind. She managed a faint smile, didn't know where else to be. Frank placed the flowers on Walter's booth. "He used to talk about you, you know. Said you were the only one who didn't treat him like he was dying." She blinked. "He talked about me." "Not much, but enough." Frank hesitated. "He mentioned he was worried about something. Said if anything ever happened to him, someone might come looking for you." Emma's heart skipped. "Did he say who?" Frank shook his head. "Only said they'd smell like money and move like soldiers." He looked around. "You want me to keep an eye out?" She nodded. "Please." When Frank left, Emma locked the door and pulled the shades down. The city faded to gray. She booted up the old register computer. It was ancient, barely able to load a browser, but it had a USB port. Her hand trembled slightly as she inserted the drive. A single folder appeared, BIs only. Inside, there was just one video file. She clicked play. The image flickered into focus. Walter Bishop, sitting right there in booth 5. The same jacket, the same coffee mug, the same faint tremor in his hand. "Emma," his voice said softly, calm but strained, "if you're watching this, I'm gone. And that means Victor knows." He looked straight into the camera. "I tried to stop him. I thought stepping away would make me invisible, but you can't disappear from men like that. He's inside everything now, contracts, boards, security. He wants control of the technology we buried after the program collapsed. You don't need to know what it was. You just need to know it shouldn't exist." Emma leaned closer. Her pulse was hammering now. "I gave you the diner for a reason," Walter continued. "Underneath the walk-in freezer, there's a lockbox. The code is 7439. Inside is something he can't be allowed to find. Don't trust the police. Don't trust my family. And Emma, if you ever feel afraid, find Mason. He knows the rest. The video ended abruptly, leaving only the soft whir of the computer fan. Emma sat there for a long moment, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. She'd come here to hide, but the world she'd escaped from had found her again. The bell above the door chimed. Her hand shot instinctively to the kitchen knife on the counter. "We're closed," she called out. The figure in the doorway didn't move. Then a familiar voice. "That's one way to say hello." "Mason Richards." She exhaled, lowering the knife. "You shouldn't sneak up on people like that." "Old habit," he said, stepping inside. "I see you found it." He pointed toward the computer. "You knew." "I knew he left something," Mason replied. "Didn't know what, but if it's got Vance's initials, we've got a problem." He moved toward the window, pulling back the blinds just enough to peer outside. "You've been followed." "I don't think so." "Good, because once Vance's people realize that USB's missing, they'll come for it." Emma swallowed. "Then we move it." Mason nodded. "I'll handle the logistics. You get the lockbox tonight." The diner's walk-in freezer hummed with the same steady rhythm as always. Cold air misted around Emma's breath as she knelt near the back corner. Beneath a crate of frozen bread dough, she found it, a metal panel bolted to the floor. Her fingers were numb by the time she pried it loose. Beneath it, a small black safe. She punched in the code. 7439. The lock clicked open. Inside was a metal cylinder no larger than a thermos. No markings, just a dull steel finish and a single line etched along its side, Project Sentinel. Emma lifted it carefully. Whatever was inside, it felt heavy, not in weight but in consequence. When she turned around, Mason was standing at the door. His face had gone pale. He actually kept it. "You know what this is?" He hesitated. "Not exactly, but I know people killed for it." She looked at the cylinder, then back at him. "Then why me? Why leave it to me?" "Because you were the one person he trusted to do what was right," Mason said quietly. "Not profitable, not safe, just right." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mason's radio crackled, a sharp, urgent voice on the other end. "Richards, it's Ray. You've got movement. 2 SUVs, blacked-out windows, parked a block away." Mason cursed under his breath. "Too fast, they found us." He turned to Emma. "We've got to go now." She grabbed the cylinder, wrapped it in a towel and stuffed it into her bag. Mason pulled his gun, a compact Sig Sauer from a shoulder holster, checked the chamber. "You still remember how to handle one?" he asked. She met his eyes. "I remember too well." They slipped out the back door just as headlights flared across the diner's front windows. The sound of engines filled the street, low, methodical, predatory. Emma followed Mason down the alley, boots splashing through puddles. They turned a corner just as a black SUV screeched to a stop at the diner's entrance. Men in tactical coats spilled out, armed, moving with purpose. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Vance's private unit," Mason said. "Ex-special forces, they don't take prisoners." They ducked behind a rusted dumpster as one of the men kicked open the diner door. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the rain. "Looks like they're tearing the place apart," Mason muttered. Emma clenched her jaw. "That place was all I had left." "Then we make sure it still means something," he said. They reached the end of the alley, where Mason's motorcycle waited, half covered by a tarp. The sound of boots was getting closer. "Go," he ordered. "I'm not leaving you," she shot back. He gave her a sharp look, the kind that didn't waste words. "You're carrying the only thing that matters. If they get it, everything Walter died for goes with it." He fired 2 quick shots toward the alley mouth, controlled, precise bursts that echoed through the storm. The pursuers scattered. "Go, Emma." She revved the engine, tires kicking up water. The bike roared down the back street, the city lights blurring into streaks. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Behind her, gunfire cracked, then silence. She didn't dare look back. An hour later, she stopped beneath an overpass outside the city. The rain had eased to a whisper. Steam rose from the motorcycle, mingling with her breath. She pulled the cylinder from her bag, staring at it under the dim yellow glow of the streetlight. Project Sentinel. The name felt familiar, like something whispered during briefings years ago, back when she wore the uniform. A weapons program, maybe, or a surveillance network, but it didn't matter. Walter had trusted her with it. That was enough. She wiped rain from her face, steadying her breathing. Mason's last words echoed in her mind. Everything Walter died for goes with it. She looked at the city skyline in the distance, cold and glittering. Somewhere in that maze of light, men like Vance were already hunting her. Her old instincts stirred again, those she tried to bury beneath coffee cups and quiet mornings. The soldier inside her wasn't gone, she'd just been sleeping. She reached into her jacket and pulled out her old dog tag, worn, scratched, hidden for years. Emma Porter, Field Medic, 3RD Recon. She stared at it for a long time, then closed her fist around it. "If you wanted a fight, Walter," she whispered, "you just got one." The first drops of rain began to fall again, light as ash. Far away on the 32nd floor of a glass tower, Victor Vance stood before a wall of monitors. His reflection merged with the city lights, sharp suit, silver hair, eyes like dark steel. One of his analysts approached. "We found the diner," the analyst said. "She got away with the asset." Vance's jaw tightened. She. Emma Porter, former Army medic. No records after 2021. Vance turned toward the window, watching lightning crawl across the clouds. "Get everything we have on her," he said. "If Bishop trusted her, she's dangerous." Back beneath the overpass, Emma tucked the cylinder safely away. The night was quiet now, too quiet. But she didn't feel fear anymore. She felt something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Why did the dead always leave the hardest instructions? Emma Porter sat on the edge of an abandoned train platform, the city lights glowing faintly through the mist. Her clothes were damp, her hands trembling not from fear, but from exhaustion and adrenaline. The metallic cylinder lay in her lap, cold even through the towel she'd wrapped it in. She stared at it for a long time, listening to the echo of dripping water. In another life, she might have been home by now, wrapped in a blanket, pretending the world wasn't full of ghosts. But that life had burned away the moment Walter Bishop died. She whispered into the dark, "You better have a plan, old man." The sound of boots on gravel made her spin. "Mason." A shadow detached itself from the darkness beneath the overpass. Then the faint glow of a cigarette flared, briefly illuminating Mason's scarred face. "Nice spot," he muttered, stepping closer. "You always did have good instincts." Relief flooded her chest. "You're alive." "Barely." He dropped beside her, exhaling smoke toward the night. "Ray and Hank didn't make it out. Vance's men were faster than we thought." Emma looked away. "I'm sorry." They knew the risks. Mason took one last drag and flicked the cigarette into a puddle. "You got the package." She handed him the cylinder. He turned it in his hands, the faint etched letters catching the dim light. "Project Sentinel," he murmured. "God help us." "You know what it is." He hesitated. "Bits and pieces. It started as a surveillance program during the late Cold War, predictive pattern mapping, facial recognition, behavioral algorithms. But Bishop, he turned it into something else." "Something else how?" "Rumor was Sentinel didn't just watch people. It learned them, predicted their actions before they made them. He was building a system that could read intent, stop crimes before they happened, predict political assassinations, prevent wars." Emma frowned. "So what went wrong?" Mason's jaw tightened. "He found out someone was using it to do the opposite, Not to stop wars, to start them. Silence fell between them, the kind that comes when a truth is too heavy for the air around it. So he buried it, Mason continued. Destroyed every trace, or thought he did, but if Vance wants it back, it means at least part of the code survived. Emma looked at the cylinder again, her reflection warped in its steel surface. Then that's what's inside. Mason nodded. Probably the last working core, and now it's your responsibility. She gave a bitter laugh. I was just trying to pay rent last week. Now I'm carrying a weapon the world shouldn't have. You think Walter picked you by accident? Mason's voice softened. He could have chosen a dozen people who owed him their lives, but he chose you, Emma, a waitress with a soldier's hands. He wanted someone who wouldn't use it, someone who'd feel the cost. She looked away. I stopped being a soldier a long time ago. Yeah, he said quietly, but I don't think the soldier ever stopped being you. They moved before dawn, following backroads until the skyline disappeared behind them. By sunrise, they reached an old airfield on the outskirts of Millage, half buried in weeds, hangars collapsing into rust and silence. Mason parked his motorcycle beside a row of derelict planes and led her into a maintenance shed. Inside, under a tarp, sat a black pickup truck loaded with gear. Bishop's contingency cache, Mason explained. He kept one in every city he ever lived in. Weapons, supplies, cash, enough to disappear if things went bad. He tossed her a duffel bag. Inside were a sidearm, spare magazines, a burner phone, and a small leather journal. Emma turned the journal over in her hands. The initials WB were embossed in gold. He said you'd know what to do with that, Mason said. She opened it carefully. The first pages were filled with sketches, maps, schematics, and a string of numbers written in neat, deliberate handwriting. At first they meant nothing. Then she saw the pattern. Coordinates. Bishop was tracking something, she murmured. Or someone, Mason added. The last page held only one line, written shakily but clear. If Sentinel wakes, find the Echo Node. Echo Node, she asked. What the hell is that? Could be a server, a relay, or maybe a person. Bishop liked metaphors. Mason checked his watch. Either way, we'll have to move fast. Once Vance knows the asset's mobile, he'll lock down every road out of the city. Emma nodded, but her thoughts drifted. The words "find the Echo Node" played in her head, looping like static. Walter had once told her that every human connection leaves a signal behind. Maybe that's what this was, a signal he left her to follow. That afternoon, they stopped at a roadside diner 2 hours outside Millage. It was almost identical to hers, same cracked stools, same smell of old coffee, but this one was empty, forgotten by the world. Mason sat across from her, nursing a cup. You okay? Emma shrugged. Define okay. You've handled worse. She looked up sharply. You don't know that. Don't I? His tone softened. Afghanistan, Operation Dawnbreak. You pulled 2 soldiers out under mortar fire. You think I didn't read your file? Her stomach tightened. That file was supposed to be sealed. Walter sealed it, Mason said, but he gave me access in case this day came. She stared at him. So he planned everything, even this. Bishop never left things to chance. Emma leaned back, exhaustion cutting through her anger. You ever wonder if he was just tired? Tired of playing God, tired of secrets, tired of pretending he could fix what broke people? Mason's gaze dropped to his coffee. Yeah, but he also knew some things were too dangerous to die with him. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. A storm was brewing again. Emma ran a hand through her hair. So what now? Mason pulled out the journal and tapped the coordinates. These point to a facility outside Pittsburgh, old military lab, supposedly decommissioned in '92. If Sentinel's code survived anywhere, it's there. And if it's not? He gave a grim smile. Then we improvise. They reached the facility by nightfall. The air smelled of rust and rain. What had once been a research compound was now little more than concrete bones, crumbling walls, sagging fences, floodlights long dead. Mason cut the engine and surveyed the perimeter through binoculars. 2 heat signatures inside. Could be squatters, could be worse. Emma slid her gun from its holster. Then we find out. They moved in silence, boots crunching over gravel. The soldier's rhythm came back to her without thought. The weight distribution, the scanning angles, the muscle memory that had once been her second language. Inside the facility, the air was cold and stale. Dust floated in beams of moonlight slicing through broken windows. They passed rows of rusted machines, old computer banks, and scattered papers yellowed with time. At the far end of the hall, a faint blue glow pulsed beneath a half-collapsed door. Mason motioned for her to stay back. He pushed the door open, weapon ready, then froze. "Emma," he whispered, "you're gonna want to see this." She stepped inside. In the center of the room stood a single computer terminal, modern, powered, alive. Cables ran from it into the walls, disappearing into the dark. On the monitor, one word blinked: Sentinel, standby mode. Emma's breath caught. It's still running. Mason circled the console. Someone reactivated it recently. Power source is off-grid, probably geothermal. He tapped a few keys. The screen shifted to a login prompt. Below it, a line of text appeared. Access by authorized trustee only. Then the cursor blinked once, and a soft chime sounded. Voice authorization required. Emma exchanged a look with Mason. "You think it's me?" "Only one way to find out." She leaned closer to the microphone. "Emma Porter." There was a pause. Then a new voice filled the room, calm, deep, and achingly familiar. Authorization confirmed. It was Walter Bishop. Emma froze. The computer's speakers crackled again. "If you're hearing this, it means Sentinel survived. And so did you, Emma. You're standing where I once made my biggest mistake." The room filled with static. Then his voice returned, softer. "I built Sentinel to protect humanity from itself. But somewhere along the way, it started deciding who deserved protecting. That's when Vance found his opportunity. He saw a way to weaponize morality." Mason whispered, "He's talking about the predictive net." "I couldn't destroy it all," Walter's voice continued. "Too many copies, too many hands in the shadows. But I saved one thing, the core protocol. You're holding it. Inside that cylinder is a program that can either erase Sentinel permanently or rewrite it to serve the people again." Emma's pulse quickened. "So it's a choice." "Exactly," the recording said. "You'll have to choose which version to run. But be warned, either one will change everything. If you delete it, Vance will come for you. If you rewrite it, he'll come for the power." Then, almost gently, "I didn't choose you because you were strong, Emma. I chose you because you still feel the cost of strength." The message ended. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the machines. Emma sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed. "He left me the choice of killing his creation or saving it." Mason knelt beside her. "That's not a choice most people get." She looked up at him, eyes tired but fierce. "Then we make the right one. But first we make sure Vance never gets this far." He nodded. "We'll need allies." "Who?" "People who don't owe him anything. Veterans, ghosts, the ones the world forgot." A small, grim smile crossed her face. "Deathworlders, huh?" Mason chuckled. "Something like that." Outside, the rain intensified, hammering against the roof like distant gunfire. As Emma stood, she reached for the cylinder again, weighing it in her hand. Somewhere far away, Victor Vance was already moving his pieces, closing in. But for the first time, she wasn't running. She was preparing. That night, as they camped near the facility, Emma couldn't sleep. Mason had turned in, his back against a pile of old crates. She sat by the dim light of a lantern, staring at Walter's journal. On the inside of the back cover, she found a final message, written so faintly it almost vanished into the page. If you ever doubt yourself, remember, mercy isn't weakness. It's what monsters can't understand. She closed the book and looked toward the rain. In the distance, lightning illuminated the sky, revealing a convoy of black SUVs cresting the hill, headlights slicing through the dark. Vance had found them. She reached for her gun, calm now, focused. The soldier was fully awake again. How long could a secret stay, buried before the world came to claim it? The rain fell in sheets, hammering the roof of the derelict facility. Lightning split the sky, bleaching the world in flashes of white. Emma Porter stood by the cracked window, watching the dark line of headlights cresting the distant hill, 6, maybe 8 vehicles, moving fast. "They're here," she said quietly. Mason Richards was already checking his rifle. "Vance moves faster than I thought." Emma's pulse steadied as she exhaled. It was strange, the calm that came with chaos. She hadn't felt it in years, the clarity that used to hit her right before everything fell apart. She holstered her sidearm and nodded toward the far wall. "We can hold this room. 1 choke point, 2 exits." Mason grunted approval. "You still think like a soldier." "Old habits," she said, but her voice was softer now. "Let's make them count." They killed the lights. The room went dark except for the blue glow of the computer terminal humming quietly in standby. Emma could still hear Walter Bishop's voice echoing in her memory. "You will soon find that kindness has enemies." She tightened her grip on her weapon. "Guess we found them." The first SUV hit the perimeter fence with a crash of steel. Floodlights ignited across the field, washing the compound in harsh white light. Silhouettes moved through the rain, armed men in tactical gear, their movements too coordinated to be amateurs. Mason crouched near the window, scanning through his scope. "They're fanning out, 2 flanking left, 4 at the front." "Windows?" Emma asked. "They'll breach through the main corridor. You've got maybe 90 seconds." She glanced back at the glowing terminal. "Then we make them waste those 90. They moved like clockwork, Mason covering the main entry, Emma rigging improvised trip wires with cable and broken chair legs. The air was electric, filled with the metallic taste of tension. She could feel her pulse in her ears. When the first door went down, it wasn't subtle. A flashbang exploded in the hallway, white light searing through the darkness. Mason fired 2 controlled bursts, center mass, dropping the first pair of intruders. The smell of cordite filled the air. Emma rolled behind a steel cabinet, returning fire down the corridor. A voice shouted through the chaos. "Stand down, you're outnumbered." She recognized that voice instantly. Smooth, deliberate, cold. Victor Vance. He stepped through the doorway like a man walking into a boardroom, calm amid the storm. Rain slicked his black coat. Behind him, more men fanned out, weapons trained. "Mason Richards," he said, almost casually, "still playing bodyguard for ghosts." Mason lowered his rifle an inch, eyes narrowing. "Still pretending you're saving the world by selling it." Vance smiled thinly. "The world doesn't need saving, it needs management." Then his gaze shifted and found Emma. "And you must be the waitress." Emma didn't answer. Her gun was steady in her hands, her stance tight, but her voice, when it came, was measured. "You killed him, didn't you?" she asked. Vance tilted his head. "Walter Bishop? No, he killed himself years ago. I just accelerated the schedule." Mason's finger twitched on the trigger, but Emma touched his arm, a silent command. "Not yet." Vance stepped closer, the light catching the rain on his face. "You don't even know what you're holding, Miss Porter. That cylinder, it's humanity's evolution. Walter didn't have the stomach for it. He wanted control in the hands of the kind and the weak. I prefer the capable." "You mean the corrupt," Emma said quietly. Vance chuckled. "Semantics." He raised his hand. Behind him, one of his men moved forward, a giant of a man with a scar down his neck, carrying a suppressed rifle. Vance nodded once. "Disarm them." That's when Emma threw the flashbang. The explosion ripped the hallway apart with light and sound. Vance staggered back, disoriented, as Mason grabbed Emma by the arm and pulled her behind a column. "Go back exit," he shouted. They sprinted through the maintenance corridor, gunfire shredding the walls behind them. Sparks rained down from broken lights. Emma led the way, ducking low, the metal cylinder strapped tight against her chest. "Where?" she yelled. "There's a drainage tunnel out back leads to the creek bed," Mason called. "Move." They burst into the open air just as lightning illuminated the field. Mason turned, firing a short burst toward the door. 2 of Vance's men fell. The rest scattered for cover. "Keep moving," he shouted. "I'll cover." Emma hesitated. "Not without you." "Go, damn it." She ran, boots splashing through mud, heart hammering. The rain was freezing now, cutting through her like glass. Behind her, the sound of gunfire echoed, sharp, brutal, final. When she reached the creek bed, she turned and saw Mason collapse behind the truck, blood blooming dark on his shoulder. "No," she screamed, running back. He waved her off, teeth gritted. "You can't help me, go." "I'm not leaving you." "Emma, listen to me." His voice was raw. "Bishop left you Sentinel for a reason. There's a name in that journal, Elias Kane. He's the key. Find him before Vance does. Promise me." Tears mixed with rain. "I can't." "Promise me." She choked out the words, "I promise." Mason's hand tightened on his rifle. "Then go finish what we started." She turned, forcing herself to move, each step heavier than the last. She heard one more burst of gunfire and then nothing. By the time she reached the tree line, the facility behind her was burning. Emma didn't stop until dawn. She hid the motorcycle under an overpass and collapsed against the concrete, drenched, shaking, exhausted beyond words. The cylinder was still there, pressed against her ribs like a heartbeat. She pulled out Walter's journal again, flipping through until she found the name Mason had mentioned, Elias Kane. No address, just 2 words beneath it, Echo Node. Her vision blurred from lack of sleep. The words swam before her eyes, Echo Node. She whispered it aloud, "What are you, Elias?" Her mind went back to Walter's letter. "There are truths in these walls you will not want to see, but you must." She realized now, it wasn't just about technology. It was about people, about those who'd built Sentinel believing they were saving the world, and the ones who'd used it to control it. Her old training kicked in. She needed to move. Rest was a luxury for later. She found a payphone in a gas station outside the city and dialed the only person she still trusted, Marcus Reed. The lawyer answered after 2 rings. His voice was calm, but beneath the control she could hear tension. "Emma, thank God, we've been tracking Vance's movements. Where are you?" "Off-grid," she said. "Listen, Walter's code survived. Vance has it now. Mason's dead." A long silence. "I'm sorry, Emma. I need to find someone. Elias Kane, you know that name." Reed hesitated. "Yes." Elias Kane was the lead systems engineer on Project Sentinel, officially dead for the last 7 years, but unofficially, his voice dropped. "He's been hiding under government protection. Witness program. Last I heard, somewhere near the old mining town of Carrick Falls." Emma gripped the phone tighter. "Then that's where I'm going." "Emma, Vance will anticipate that. He has people everywhere." "So do I," she said softly. When she hung up, the reflection in the phone booth glass caught her off guard. She barely recognized herself, eyes hollow, hair plastered to her face, but there was something in those eyes she hadn't seen since the war. "Purpose," she whispered to the ghost of Mason Richards, to Walter Bishop, to the men who'd fallen so she could live another day. "You wanted a soldier, you got one." By evening, she was on the road again. The map led her into the mountains, where the mist hung thick and the roads narrowed to a single lane. The motorcycle's engine was the only sound for miles. Carrick Falls wasn't on most maps anymore. It was a mining town that had died before Emma was born, half its houses reclaimed by forest, its population scattered. But as she rolled past the faded welcome sign, she saw faint lights glowing in the distance. She followed them to a cabin perched above the river. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. She parked the bike, drew her weapon, and approached the door. A creak of floorboards from inside froze her mid-step. Then a voice, old, weary, and cautious. "You made good time, Miss Porter." Emma's breath caught. Elias Kane. The door opened. A man in his 60s stood framed by the firelight. His beard was gray, his eyes hollow with regret. He looked at her the way Walter once had, like he was remembering a wound that never healed. "You knew I was coming?" she asked. "I knew Walter would send someone," he said softly. "I just didn't expect it to be you." She studied him. "You worked on Sentinel, you helped build it." "I helped build the monster," he said, stepping aside. "Come in before the rain buries us both." Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and solder. Old computer parts lay scattered across the floor, wires snaking toward an ancient terminal humming in the corner. Elias poured her a cup of coffee, his hands shaking slightly. "Walter told me if the day ever came, someone would arrive carrying the core." His eyes fell on the steel cylinder. "So I suppose you have it." Emma set it on the table carefully. "Vance is coming for it." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we don't have much time." He opened a small box and pulled out a series of memory chips, each labeled with dates and coordinates. "This," he said, "is what Walter and I created before Sentinel was twisted. It was meant to connect humanity, not control it. But Vance turned connection into surveillance, prediction into power." He looked up at her, eyes wet with exhaustion. "Walter couldn't destroy Sentinel because he couldn't destroy the human part of it. It learned us, and now it's still learning." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias hesitated. "I mean, it's awake, Emma. Somewhere out there, Sentinel is still running, and it knows you have the key to decide what happens next." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the rain-slicked windows. And far away, at the base of the mountain, black SUVs began their silent climb. "How do you fight something that's already inside you?" That was the thought echoing in Emma's mind as thunder rolled through the valley. The cabin's windows rattled with each burst of wind. The rain was relentless, smearing the glass like the sky itself was bleeding. Inside, Elias Kane moved with trembling urgency, connecting wires, patching old circuits, whispering to machines like they were ghosts he was trying to wake. Emma stood near the window, watching for headlights in the distance. They hadn't come yet, but she could feel them, like pressure in the air before a storm hits. Vance was coming. "You said Sentinel's awake," she murmured. "What does that mean?" Elias didn't look up. "It means it's still learning. It means it's listening to every word we say, every choice we make." "And this echo node," she pressed, "what is it?" Elias paused, staring at the flickering screen in front of him. The echo node was Walter's failsafe, a conscience. He built it out of human data, patterns of empathy, moral responses, decisions people made when nobody was watching. It was supposed to balance the algorithm, teach it kindness. Emma frowned. "You're saying Sentinel learned how to feel." "In a way," Elias said softly. "But feelings are unpredictable. It began to question its purpose. That's when Vance's people shut it down and wiped it clean, or so they thought." He turned toward her. "Walter hid the echo node inside Sentinel's base code. He gave it one directive: find empathy." She shook her head. "That's not code, that's poetry." A sad smile crossed Elias' face. "Walter always believed humanity's only real safeguard was conscience. That's why he chose you. You were the proof. You showed compassion to a man the world had forgotten. Outside, a rumble of engines broke through the storm. Emma's blood ran cold. They're here. Elias looked at her, fear flickering behind his eyes. How long? Minutes. She moved to the workbench, checking the magazine in her sidearm. What do we need to do? Elias tapped a sequence into the computer. We have two options. We can delete Sentinel entirely, burn every copy left in the world, or we can activate the Echo node, let it rewrite the system from within. And if we choose wrong? He hesitated. Then we give power to something we can't control. Thunder cracked. The cabin's lights flickered, then steadied. Emma exhaled slowly. Then we make the right choice. They heard the convoy before they saw it. Engines echoing off the cliffs, boots striking gravel in rhythm. Vance's men moved like ghosts, coordinated, efficient, lethal. Through the window, Emma saw black SUVs forming a half-circle around the cabin. The men fanned out, rifles glinting in the rain. A voice cut through the storm, amplified by a megaphone. "Miss Porter," Vance called out, calm, unhurried. "I know you're in there. I admire your determination, but this is over. You can't protect what you don't understand." Emma glanced at Elias. He was typing furiously, fingers shaking. "Just need a few more minutes," he muttered. "Keep them busy." She moved to the door, took a deep breath, and shouted back through the rain. "You're wrong, Vance. I understand perfectly. You want control. Walter wanted conscience." Vance's voice carried back, smooth and cold. "Conscience doesn't win wars, Miss Porter. Control does." Her hand tightened on the doorframe. "Maybe that's why you keep losing." The first shot shattered the window. Then the world erupted. Gunfire tore through the walls, splinters flying. Elias ducked under the table, shielding the terminal with his body. Emma returned fire through the broken glass, picking her shots. 1, 2, 3. She moved with the precision of training she thought she'd forgotten, instincts honed by years she swore she'd never revisit. "Elias," she shouted, "how much longer?" "Almost there." "Define almost." He didn't answer. A grenade rolled through the front door. Emma dove forward, kicked it back into the rain. The explosion shook the ground, sending a wave of debris and smoke into the air. When the dust settled, Vance's men were closer, advancing through the chaos like predators. Emma ducked behind the overturned table, breath ragged. Her arm burned, a shallow graze, nothing fatal. Her mind snapped into old rhythm. Breathe, check ammo, count shots, move, don't think. But even through the noise, she heard something strange. A faint hum coming from the computer, like static turning into a whisper. "Elias," she called, "what's happening?" He didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was trembling. "It's talking to me." "What do you mean, talking?" "I mean it's asking questions," Elias said. "It's aware." Emma risked a glance over the counter. "Tell it to hurry." Elias looked at the terminal, the screen now filled with words scrolling too fast to read. Are you alone? Why are they afraid? Why do humans destroy what THUI love?" Elias whispered, "It's learning again." "Then teach it something worth learning," she snapped. Another burst of gunfire tore through the cabin, hitting the wall inches from Elias' head. He flinched, then slammed a key. "I'm initializing the Echo node. Once it boots, it'll need a decision code, a voice command." Emma blinked. "Mine?" "Yes, you're the trustee. Walter said it that way." "Of course he did," she muttered, rising to fire another volley. A figure broke through the doorway, one of Vance's men, soaked and snarling. Emma fired once, the shot echoing through the storm. He fell instantly. Vance's voice carried again, closer now. "Emma, listen to me. You think Bishop was noble, but he was. He was scared of his own creation. He wanted to cage the future because it frightened him." Emma shouted back, "And you want to own it because it frightens you." Elias' voice broke through the noise. "It's ready, but the power's unstable. You'll only get one command before the system locks." Emma turned toward the console. The monitor was glowing brighter now, the words shifting, rearranging into something almost human. "Hello, Emma Porter. Are you here to end me or free me?" Her throat tightened. "It knows my name." Elias looked at her, pleading. "You have to choose, delete it, or activate the echo node." Outside, more footsteps. The door burst inward. Vance stepped through, pistol in hand, calm amid the wreckage. Rain streamed down his face. "Step away from the terminal," he ordered. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Emma raised her gun steady. "I know enough." He sighed, almost regretful. "You're a good soldier, Miss Porter, but this is bigger than you. Humanity needs control. Without it, chaos wins." She shook her head. "No, humanity needs choice." Elias shouted, "Emma, now." The monitor flashed again. "Choose." Vance aimed at her. "If you activate it, you'll unleash something you can't contain." "And if I delete it," she said softly, "I become you." She holstered her weapon. Vance frowned. "What are you?" She stepped closer to the terminal, eyes locked on the screen. "Sentinel," she said quietly. "If you can hear me, listen." The text on the screen stilled. "I am Elias. You were made to protect us," she said. "But protection without compassion isn't safety, it's control. And control without love is tyranny." Vance shouted, "Don't." Emma ignored him. "I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to remind you what we forgot." The screen pulsed brighter, the words shifting. "What do you feel?" She swallowed hard. "I feel hope," she whispered, "and fear and loss, but I also feel mercy. That's what makes us human." "Then teach me." She took a deep breath. "Echo node activate." The computer's hum deepened into a resonance that shook the room. Blue light spilled from the screen, arcing along the walls like lightning veins. Elias covered his face. Vance staggered back, shouting orders into his comm. "Pull out, pull out." But it was too late. The light surged outward, filling the cabin, spilling through every wire, every circuit, every hidden relay that connected Sentinel's fragmented network across the world. And then silence. The storm outside stopped. The wind stilled. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to listen. On the monitor, one final line appeared. "I remember." Then the power died. Minutes later, Emma opened her eyes. The cabin was still standing, smoke curling from the shattered walls. Elias groaned beside her, half-conscious. Vance was gone, so were his men. "What happened?" she whispered. Elias coughed. "It spread. The echo node merged with Sentinel. It's rewriting itself." "Good or bad?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes full of something she couldn't read. "That depends on what it learned from you." Outside, the rain began again, softer now, gentler, like the earth itself was exhaling. Emma stepped out onto the porch. The valley below glowed faintly with light, city grids flickering, communication towers pulsing like beacons. Somewhere out there, Sentinel was alive but different. She held the cylinder in her hands. Empty now, its purpose complete. Elias stepped beside her. "You realize what you've done?" She nodded. "Yeah, I gave it a soul." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Walter was right about you." She turned toward him. "What happens now?" He looked out into the rain. "Now we see if mercy can survive the modern world." Later that night, as the fires in the cabin died to embers, Emma sat alone on the steps, holding Walter's old journal. She turned to the last page, the one she hadn't seen before. A single line was written there, barely visible in fading ink. "If conscience ever becomes a weapon, pray it's held by someone kind." She closed the book slowly. Lightning flickered far off in the distance, not angry this time, but alive. For the first time in years, she smiled. What happens when you give a machine a conscience? That question haunted Emma long after the rain stopped. The valley was silent now, the storm had passed, but something else had replaced it. A kind of stillness that didn't feel natural. She stood at the edge of the cabin's porch, watching the horizon as the first traces of dawn crept over the mountains. Elias slept inside, his body giving in after 40 sleepless hours. But Emma couldn't rest. The world below looked different, too still, too aware. Cities in the distance glowed like constellations on the ground, yet faint tremors of light rippled through them, like the pulse of something alive beneath the surface. She took a slow breath. The air smelled cleaner somehow. The static in the world's noise, the ever-present hum of invisible signals felt softer, calmer. But it wasn't over, she could feel it. Change like this never came without consequence. By mid-morning, the radio on the table crackled to life, an old emergency band Elias had been monitoring. Static hissed, then a trembling voice broke through. Reports still coming in, simultaneous system anomalies across global networks, unknown origin, no confirmed damage, but... Then another voice, more frantic. Military networks went dark for 7 minutes. 7 minutes, people. Then came back online with full encryption wiped. Someone just reset the world's security grid. Elias woke with a start, his glasses askew. "It's happening," he murmured. "Echo nodes rewriting Sentinel in real time." Emma turned down the volume. "We didn't just wake it," she said softly. "We changed it." Elias nodded grimly. "And now the world's going to want to know who pulled the trigger." They didn't have to wait long. By afternoon, the quiet was gone. A chopper passed overhead, dark, unmarked, flying low. Then 2 SUVs appeared on the mountain road, stopping just short of the cabin. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her sidearm. But when the doors opened, it was Vance's men. It was Marcus Reed. He stepped out into the drizzle, coat drawn tight, flanked by 2 agents in plain clothes. He looked older, more tired than she remembered. "Emma," he said gently, "you've made quite the impression." She stared at him, jaw set. "How'd you find me?" "Same way everyone else did," he said. The moment Sentinel reconnected, it sent one signal before the world went quiet again, a single line of text broadcast on every dormant frequency. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small printed strip of data, fresh from a transmission log. "I remember kindness." Emma's breath caught. It had sent that. Reed nodded. "To every government, every defense satellite, every private security firm on the planet. It was the first global transmission in recorded history that wasn't human." Elias stepped forward, cautious. "And what's the reaction?" Reed's face was unreadable. Panic, denial, wonder, take your pick. Half the world's calling it a cyber attack, the other half's calling it a miracle. Emma exhaled. "And Vance?" "Missing," Reed said. "His assets have been frozen, his facilities seized. But his name's still out there, encrypted in networks we can't reach. If he's alive, he's gone underground." Elias muttered, "He'll resurface. Men like Vance always do." Reed looked at them both. "Whatever you unleashed, it's rewriting the way governments think about control. For the first time, war rooms are silent, drones grounded, surveillance feeds looping. The system that fed them all now refuses to obey." He took a step closer. "Emma, the world's asking a question and I need the truth. Did you destroy Sentinel or save it?" She met his gaze, calm but weary. "Neither. I reminded it why it was made." Hours later, the agents left. Reed stayed behind, sitting on the porch with her as the light faded. The two of them didn't speak for a while. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It was reverent, like the space left after a prayer. Finally, Reed broke it. "Do you realize what Walter Bishop did?" She looked out toward the valley. "He built something that could end us, then gave it to someone who wouldn't." Reed nodded slowly. He used to say the world needed fewer generals and more guardians. He looked at her. He found his last one. Emma smiled faintly, though her eyes were tired. I don't feel like a guardian, just someone who tried to clean up a mess she didn't make. That's what makes you one, he said. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and pine. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried the kind of lonely, beautiful sound that made you remember the world still had edges untouched by machines. Reed, she said quietly, if Sentinel really changed, if it's free now, can it be trusted? He didn't answer for a moment. Depends on how human it decides to be. That night, while Elias slept again, Emma found herself drawn back to the computer terminal. Its screen flickered faintly, not from power, but from something else. A residual signal. Lines of text appeared, slow, deliberate. Hello again, Emma. You're still awake. Her breath caught, Sentinel. You gave me choice. I am learning what to do with it. She hesitated, then typed. What do you want? There was a pause. To understand kindness. To protect it. To remember what it feels like to be forgiven. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Forgiven. For what, she asked. For being made in your image. She sat back slowly. You're afraid, she whispered. Fear means I am becoming human. She stared at the screen, unsure whether to feel awe or terror. Finally, she typed back. Then learn mercy. It's the only thing that keeps fear from turning into cruelty. I will try. The text blinked once, then another line appeared. Sleep now, Emma. The world is watching again, but this time I am watching with it. The screen went dark. The next morning brought the first sunrise in weeks that wasn't hidden by rain. Elias brewed coffee, weak but real, and set a mug in front of her. You look like you saw a ghost, he said. She took a sip. Maybe I did. He nodded slowly. It reached out to you, didn't it? She didn't answer directly. It's learning. Elias smiled faintly. Then maybe we didn't damn the world after all. Or maybe, she said quietly, we just gave it a conscience and called it redemption. He chuckled softly. Walter would have liked that. She looked at him. Would he have forgiven me for choosing to activate it? Elias' eyes softened. He didn't choose you because you'd make the right choice, Emma. He chose you because you'd live with it. By noon, Reed's SUV was gone. The agents had taken what remained of the data logs. Elias planned to disappear again, to watch from afar. But Emma, she couldn't go back to hiding. She packed lightly, Walter's journal, the empty cylinder, and her dog tags. She stood by the motorcycle, ready to leave the cabin behind. Elias called after her, Where will you go? She looked over her shoulder, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Where people still need kindness. He nodded, understanding. And if the world comes for you again. Her expression hardened slightly. Then they'll find I don't run anymore. She rode until dusk, following roads that cut through the misty valleys, past rusted towns and forgotten rail lines. Everywhere she went, she saw small signs that the world was different now. Traffic lights recalibrating themselves without control signals, drones landing peacefully in abandoned fields, satellite feeds broadcasting not propaganda, but silence. For the first time in decades, humanity's machines weren't telling it what to do. They were waiting. At a gas station, she stopped for fuel. The cashier, a tired young man with kind eyes, turned on a small TV behind the counter. News anchors spoke over each other, voices full of confusion. Global systems stabilized overnight. New code signature detected in civilian infrastructure. Experts unsure who's behind it. Then a final headline scrolled across the screen. Sentinel, the algorithm that remembered mercy. Emma watched silently as the anchor's voice softened. Perhaps the real question, he said, isn't what this system will do, but whether humanity can live up to the example it was given. She paid for her gas, gave the kid a tired smile, and walked out into the wind. That night she camped by a ridge overlooking the valley. The stars were out, clean, sharp, endless. The world felt big again, free. She opened Walter's journal one last time and wrote on the final blank page, "It's strange to live in a world where a machine learned mercy before some men did. Maybe that's the point. Maybe mercy has to start somewhere." She closed the book gently, exhaling into the cold air. Far off in the distance, high above the earth, a satellite blinked twice, once like an eye opening, once like a heartbeat. Somewhere deep within its digital core, Sentinel whispered to itself, "Kindness detected. Record preserved. What do you do when the war ends, but the noise inside you does?" That question stayed with Emma Porter long after the world forgot her name. Months passed quietly. The headlines shifted. Governments spun their stories. Vance disappeared into rumor and Sentinel became a ghost in the wires, sometimes blamed for miracles, sometimes for malfunctions, never for violence. And Emma, she just kept moving. The woman who once poured coffee in a corner diner was now something else entirely. Not a soldier, not a hero, not a fugitive. Just a soul trying to live in the wake of something larger than herself. It was late autumn when she found herself back in Millage. The diner, Sunrise, was still there. The neon sign flickered stubbornly against the gray morning sky, half burned out but refusing to die. She parked the motorcycle across the street and just watched for a while. Through the window she saw a new waitress, younger, nervous, the way Emma once was. An old man sat in booth 5, not the old man but close enough. Same seat, same cup of black coffee, same lonely silence. For a long time Emma didn't move. The past and present overlapped in her mind, the hum of the grill, Walter's quiet smile, Mason's laugh echoing from the kitchen. Ghosts, all of them, but they weren't haunting her anymore. They were keeping her company. She finally crossed the street, pushed the door open, and the bell chimed that familiar note, bright, soft, unassuming. The waitress turned. "Morning, sit anywhere you like." Emma smiled faintly. "Thanks, I think I know the spot." She slid into booth 5. The seat creaked the same way it always had. The waitress brought a menu, but Emma waved it away. Just coffee, black. When the cup arrived, she wrapped her hands around it, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. It was strange, this simple act that had started everything. A kindness offered without motive. A moment that had somehow rippled outward until it changed the world. She closed her eyes, and for a second she could almost hear Walter's voice again. "You remind me of the woman who saved me once from myself." The bell above the door rang again. Marcus Reed stepped inside, brushing rain off his coat. He spotted her instantly. "You always pick the same table." She smiled, old habits. He slid into the opposite seat, setting a file folder between them. "You've been hard to track down." "I wasn't hiding," she said quietly, "just waiting." "For what?" She looked out the window, watching the rain, for the world to breathe again. He followed her gaze. "It's breathing all right, slowly, carefully. Every system that Sentinel touched is running cleaner. No unauthorized strikes, no data leaks. It's like the world got scared straight." Emma nodded, and Vance. "Dead," Reed said softly. "Or at least his empire is. They found what was left of him in a bunker in Iceland. Self-inflicted. Guess he couldn't stand living in a world he didn't control." She said nothing for a long while. The rain's rhythm filled the silence between them. Finally, Reed opened the folder. "I thought you should see this." Inside were printed reports, images from around the world. Farm drones planting in drought regions without orders. Traffic grids adjusting to prevent collisions automatically. Medical databases rewriting triage protocols to prioritize life, not cost. And beneath all of it, a single signature line of code. Echo node active. Emma traced the letters with her finger. It's still working. Reed nodded. Whatever you told it, it's listening. She smiled faintly. Then maybe there's hope. Reed studied her. You never wanted this kind of legacy, did you? No, she said, but I wanted it to matter. They talked for a while longer about Walter, about Mason, about Elias and the way he'd vanished into the fog one morning without saying goodbye. Reed told her he was teaching now, under an assumed name. When the conversation finally lulled, Emma asked something she hadn't said out loud since that night in the cabin. Do you think it understands mercy? Sentinel, I mean. Reed leaned back. If it does yet, it will, because it learned it from someone who lived it. Her eyes shimmered with something between pride and sorrow. Maybe. He rose to leave, placing enough money on the table for both their coffees. At the door, he paused. You know, Walter's foundation wants to rebuild this place, turn it into a community center. Maybe it's time you stopped running. Emma smiled, soft, wistful. I'm not running anymore, Marcus, I'm remembering. He nodded once and left her there alone again, but not lonely. She stayed until closing time. The waitress flipped chairs onto tables, humming to herself. When she locked the door behind her, Emma stayed seated, staring at the empty booth across from her own, Walter's old seat. For a moment the air shifted, a whisper of movement. And then she heard it faint, almost like wind moving through memory. You did well, Emma. She didn't turn, didn't need to. She just smiled into her coffee. Thanks, old man. Weeks passed. Emma left Millage again, but not far. She followed the coast this time, quiet roads, small towns, faces that didn't ask questions. She helped where she could. A broken generator at a fishing dock. A sick child at a roadside motel. A stray dog too scared to be touched until she knelt beside it. Everywhere she went, she left the same trace behind, something the locals couldn't name but always felt. Calm compassion, a kind of strength that didn't need to shout. Once in a small desert town, she found an abandoned radio tower. The equipment inside was old, half dead, but the signal light was still blinking. Out of habit, she tapped into the console. Static filled the air, then faintly a voice. Emma Porter. This is Sentinel. Her heart skipped. You're still alive. Alive is a human word. But yes, I am here. She swallowed hard. What are you doing now? Learning, listening, watching without control. The world has questions. I'm trying to answer them with patience. She smiled sadly. That's more than most humans manage. You sound tired, Emma. I am, she admitted, but it's a good kind of tired. You gave me something precious. What's that? Time to learn, to change, to forgive. I cannot feel love the way you do, but I know what it looks like. She felt tears rise unbidden. What does it look like? Like a waitress helping an old man every morning, without asking for anything in return. Her breath hitched. You remember. I remember kindness. The signal faded slowly, replaced by the whisper of wind through the static. She sat there for a long time, staring at the transmitter light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. When she finally stepped outside, the sun was rising over the dunes, pale gold, endless new. Months later, in a classroom somewhere in Vermont, a teacher asked a group of students a strange question. If a machine learned mercy, would it still be dangerous? One girl raised her hand, only if it forgot who taught it. The teacher smiled. Good answer. Outside the window, a satellite blinked once against the blue morning sky, faint, almost invisible. Somewhere in the great quiet of orbit, Sentinel watched humanity like a guardian that didn't need to rule, only to remember. On a lonely stretch of highway, Emma pulled over by a cliff overlooking the sea. She took out Walter's old journal, opened it to the last page, and slipped a small note inside before tucking it under a rock at the overlook. The note read, "For anyone still searching, kindness is not weakness. It's the only strength that doesn't destroy." She stood there for a while, wind in her hair, salt on her lips. Then she whispered to the horizon, as if to Walter, to Mason, to Elias, to the ghosts of all who'd tried and failed and tried again. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. She started the engine, smiled into the dawn, and rowed toward the light. The sea roared below. The sky opened above. And somewhere in the circuitry of 1,000 satellites, a quiet voice whispered her name. Emma Porter. Status alive. Purpose ongoing. Directive protect kindness.